Welcome to Group Talk. 4 shows, 1 podcast from the Small Group Network focusing on topics relevant to small group ministries. Whether you're in a church of 100 or 10,000, whether you're a volunteer or staff, we want to support, encourage, and equip you to lead well. So relax, listen, and enjoy Inside Saddleback with Steve Glayton.
It is February 2021. Can you believe it? Happy February to all of you small group point people out there. And thank you so much for tuning in to listen to this show today. Derek here as always, along with your favorite host, the man, Steve Glayton.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see you in February. Doesn't January seem like 3 years ago?
Yes, it does. Steve, how's your new year been so far? And who are you pulling for in the Super Bowl?
You know, it's kind of tough. You know, as a Broncos fan, I can't stand the Chiefs. And as a Buckeye fan, I can't stand that Brady, who's a Michigan graduate that's an amazing quarterback, is helping the Buccaneers. So I'm hoping that, the game doesn't happen, but the commercials are fun.
Yes, always looking forward to those commercials. They're the best. So we're already into 2021. Steve, I know that at the beginning of each year, you and Lisa make some goals regarding your spiritual health assessment and goals. Anything you want to share with us there on how that's going?
Oh, God bless you. Already starting out with a little zinger right there. No, actually, it's gone pretty good. I must confess. It's, are we perfect? Are we there? Instead of going out to eat, which was what we'd normally do as we work on our health, checkup and health goals and that are our spiritual health assessment. We did it over a couple times of walking the lake. So it was like a 3.5 mile journey of, just talking it through and capturing things like that. So it's been good. It's been fun. Obviously with COVID, we've had to get on a number of different pages. But I'm kind of pleased with where we're heading out and, some goals that we've put in each one of the 5 areas. So it's I'm excited about it. How about you? I mean, you just moved up to the Pacific Northwest. So, are you behaving?
Back in the PNW. Loving it. And I'm loving all these Bernie memes. I mean, they're just everywhere. All of a sudden, like every picture on Instagram I'm seeing Bernie Sanders. Do you have a favorite meme?
I mean, it is probably the best thing that happened to America in this time was to get a little levity from that. But my favorite one it's the classic Bernie chair, great mittens, where he's crossed over and looking kind of sour. And it's 2 identical pictures. And on one side, it's how a Pentecostal looks when they're not enjoying the service. And then on the opposite side, identical picture is how a Baptist looks when they are enjoying a service. And I thought, oh, yeah, I like that. I like that. We'll play.
Oh, I know. We so needed this. I love the memes. And today we're talking about 3 areas for your groups to shine in today's culture. Steve, set this up for us.
Yeah, I mean, while we're moving from light and airy Super Bowl and Super Bowl commercials and Bernie, and I have to tell you, this is probably one of the harder podcasts that I think that we have done up to date, and but I think it's necessary. Because in the last 10 months, I've just had all kinds of conversations with people who are happy and who are mad, and pastors who are happy and who are mad. And some things have just really stood out to me. And it's a little bit of how unhinged we have gotten and how we've deviated from some of the fundamental playbooks of Christianity. But I want to share with you why, if the church isn't careful, we're going to lose the battle on abortion, sexual attraction, racism, socialism, really any polarizing issue. Because if we aren't careful, the church is going to do more to repel people from us than to attract people to us. And the solution is and probably isn't what some of you may think. So I want to encourage you, as much as I may trigger you on something, to continue to listen all the way through the podcast, because I think it's going to pull together nicely. But before we kind of get to that 4th block of the trending topic and we kind of pull everything together, I think we've got to talk about the 3 areas which I think are the underpinnings that our small group ministry ethos has to have. And this is why you, as a small group point leader, whether you're volunteer, whether you're paid, we're going to be talking about unity, diversity, and civility, and how if those don't start playing together nicely inside our small group ministry, it's going to rip the fabric of our church apart. And what's great is that our show blocks, as you guys know, we run in 4 different blocks of, the Saddleback Scoop. And then going from there, we're going to head into the network nugget, and then the leadership learning, and then the trending topic. But the blocks that we're going to, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. They fit nicely into this framework, and I think they touch on each one individually. But I think as we pull together in the trending topic, I'm hoping that our listeners are still with us, because I'm excited to share these polarizing issues of, I think the small group ministry is going to be pivotal to holding the church together.
So everybody buckle your seatbelts. This is going to be a big show. Steve's going to tackle some big issues. And like he said, stick around to the very end. You might get triggered along the way, but we're going to land this plane at the end. So Steve, normally we would have a Saddleback Scoop. Where does that fit in this show then?
Yeah, and actually, I think this fit in better than I thought, because it really modeled unity. Everybody loves unity. When you're unified with somebody, it is just the best of times. And one of the things that happened this past weekend was we were celebrating Pastor Tom Holliday, who has been at Saddleback 30 years. Did a great video montage of him over the last 30 years, which was just incredible. But his life is just amazing, how he's modeled so much to each one of us who are coming behind him. And there's not enough things I can say for Tom and his wife, Shondell, who ministers to our staff wives. But, it's great that, Rick was helping to recap. And I'm going to be paraphrasing these terribly. But, he was recapping what we've learned in these 30 years about being unified with each other. And one of them is that success is never a solo entity. We all need mentors and models and partners and friends, but there's no one successful person. And I love that, Rick was saying this, is that, he's not successful being on his own, but when you're unified with others with a common interest in that is when you can be the most successful. And another thing he talked about, which I am taking the loose liberties of paraphrasing this way I would say it, but it says, for me personally, the older I get, it's not so much the place I work at, but it's the people I'm doing ministry and the people I'm doing life with. And the honesty is that, all the elders, we've been together 20 plus years at Saddleback and have enjoyed that run together and steering the church. Obviously, we're getting ready to pass it off in a transition. But, the older you get, it's not about working at a place. It's about who you're working with. And then the third thing is that love always wins out in the end. Love is always what wins out in the end. You can disagree with each other, but we all know that we have our best intentions in mind. And I say this to staff all the time. Nobody wakes up and says, how can I make this person's life miserable? I mean, I don't wake up saying, how can I make Derek's life terrible so that when it is terrible because of me, which it rarely is, I am sure.
Never.
He loves me so much. But in our show notes is this weekend of January, this past weekend of January 24th, 2021, if you're listening to this much later in the future, and January 31st, 2021. Rick has been doing a couple talks on unity and just the biblical premise on it. And in the show notes is the outline where he talks about, 12 beautiful pieces that are in the church on about being unified. But I want to touch on just a couple verses for you. Because when you're looking at unity, and again, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because we're all excited about being unified with somebody. We like the people that are like us. But if I could just phrase it in, there's some great scriptures on your love, your faith, and your generous spirit. And 2 Thessalonians 1:3, it says, "My dear friends, we always have a good reason to thank God for you, because your faith in God and your love for each other keeps growing all the time. And your love shines together and it comes together. Your faith, we always thank God for you and how you put your faith into practice. 1 Thessalonians 1, 2, and 3 just talks about that piece of, it's not only just having the love, it's the faith to put it into practice. And this is where it's going to tie together. The church is going to need incredible faith in order to bring these three areas into your small group ministry. And then your generous spirit. I love what this scripture says to us. It says, they were extremely generous in their giving even more than they could afford. And so it's probably, it's the essence of, you got to start out being unified as a small group ministry, about having love being the piece that just permeates through everything that we stand for, and that our love is going to hold us through the thick and the thin. This is why we always talk about how the church is a family system. Families have bumps all the time, but it is the commitment to each other. And that's what's saddened me as I've talked with people who have been angry with us, whether it's been because of how we handled the protest, or how we handled the pandemic, or how we handled the election, or how we have handled the reopening, whatever it's been. It's been, just a boiler point of just saying, hey, I want to leave my family. And as we know in culture, the family unit is very disposable. And the beautiful thing about unity is that your love, your faith, and your generous spirit will always hold it together. So that's it's just an incredible piece. I think Tom's celebration of his 30 years was just a little snapshot of what unity can do for a church.
I love those scriptures you shared, Steve, and that quote especially. Success is never a solo entity. You need mentors, models, partners, and friends. So good. Well, on to our Network Nugget segment, talking about the latest news, happenings from the SGN stratosphere and universe. Steve, take it away.
Yeah, on this one, okay, so this leads into it in the next point in a little bit different way, and this is I want to challenge the network. At the beginning of the pandemic, almost 10 months ago, I think it was in March or April of 2020. We talked about racial reconciliation. And with this, Derek, I'm going to let you give some highlights on the network's happenings like you talked about, give a little nugget. But I want to challenge you in the area of diversity. Now, we talked about unity, how everyone loves that. But I want to talk to you about diversity just a smidge. And this, in diversity always depends on what area you're in. I've traveled the globe. I've been on 6 of our 7 continents. And diversity is always there. There is always prejudice. There's always churches that don't like other churches. There are people groups that don't like other people groups. There are language barriers that think their language is the best and your language is the worst. There's always factions that are around. Now, I haven't gone to Antarctica. It's probably the most unifying continent on the planet because there's just penguins there generally. But the thing that's going to be in your show notes is we did 2 podcasts just talking about how your small groups, how they can play a role in racism, and then developing an anti-racist culture in your small group. And I think this would be good to go back and listen to as we're thinking about diversity, because it can definitely be about race, no doubt about it. But a lot of times, outside of race, it can be about your theology. And for centuries, theologians have been arguing and churches have split over theology. It can be about politics. We just came out of an election and there's still a residual anger and hate and things that are spitting out all through our culture. It can be towards gender and all of that. But part of what I would challenge the network to do, I encourage you to go back and listen to those 2 podcasts. I think they help set up as you're looking, whether it's race or politics or theology or gender or, wherever you may be. But you got to look at these 4 areas. Look at you, look at your small group and your small group ministry, look at your leadership, look at your church, and ask yourself, how are we handling diversity? How are you handling it? Do you know anybody different than you? Different than you theologically in your perspective, different than you in your political bent, different than you in your gender, different than you in your race. I mean, look at you and figure out where's diversity playing a part. It can be in your small group, and it may be in who your small group ministers to when they're doing a serving project. May not be so much in your small group, although I think that would be healthy. Look at your small group ministry. Is it segregated as much as our country is segregated, whether it's theology, whether it's race, whether it's your political views, whether it's gender? Gender breakdowns are great, but sometimes, we need each other's gender, or need the other gender, I should say. Your church leadership, who is steering your small group ministry, and then just your church overall. Now, you may not have too much input into your church, but you do have a whole lot of input into the leadership of your small group ministry. And I would just encourage you in the area of diversity, challenge yourself. Let's make 2021 someplace where you just work. I mean, I know my small group, we're very ethnically diverse. And there are many things that we have said to each other that the other has to clue us in on and saying, hey, that's a pain point, or that's a hurt, or I felt offended in all of that. So, I'd encourage you in the area of diversity to look through that. Now, I know, Derek, you got fun things to say, but I want you to challenge yourself and your small group ministry, your leadership in your church, and honestly looking at diversity and seeing where you're at, because it's going to play a big part when we talk about the trending topic.
No, that's really good. And I get to share a couple fun things here. Not that yours weren't fun, but in our last show, Steve, we didn't get to take a minute and celebrate some of the wins of the previous year, because I don't want to assume that.
That's so true. I mean, so often we do that as a church. We're on to the next hill all the time. We never reflect back. So thanks for bringing us back to that. And it was an amazing report. Maybe you can throw that in the show notes too, just to help us out.
Yeah, exactly. So every year in December, we release our annual ministry report. This year, we called it the top 10 highlights of 2020. And I mean, despite all the challenges of 2020 with COVID-19, 2020 was still an incredible year for the Small Group Network. It really was. And I mean, God did so many great things in and through our ministry and our teams. It would be impossible to list them all. I just wanted to read through just the top 10 highlights real quick. Number one, really cool. We reached the most ever countries last year. We connected with, encouraged, or equipped small group point people in 125 different countries in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool. Another big win or highlight was the launch of our new online training platform. You've heard us talk a lot about that on this podcast. You can go to smallgroupnetwork.com/courses, and you'll see our online training platform where you can enroll in some of our learning management system courses. We've got Align and we've got Accelerate coming up. So that's been cool.
I think I saw it live on the webcast on the website already. So it's not just coming, it's here.
Yeah, it's here. We just launched Accelerate, and it's our biggest ever course. We're really excited about that, so check that out. Our Group Talk podcast, this very podcast that we're on, really expanded to new heights. We went from one show last year to now 4 shows with a new episode every week. So that's been a big win. We created a new COVID-19 small group resource page. We saw those resources surge. Our leadership team grew to the biggest ever since we've been in existence as a network. So we're excited about our team, and just a shout out to all of our amazing leaders. Whether you're a small group network blogger or a podcast host or a social media manager, or all of our amazing connection team leaders, our directors, our regional leaders, you guys make the network happen. So we're so grateful for you. A couple more wins from 2020. We launched our new Spanish website. Steve, how much do you like that?
I was going to say oui, but that's French. Si.
We launched our new cohort program, which is pretty cool. You want to say anything about that super fast, Steve?
No, yeah. I mean, we're developing cohorts for every one of our courses. If you've never done a cohort professionally, if you are in the marketplace or even in a church learning system, it's a powerful means of learning with a group of people that can eventually be in your huddle. So it's exciting stuff. We're excited to roll those out. So Align has a number of cohorts that are rolling already in 2021, but look forward to every one of our courses having a Align companion that go with it.
3 more quick highlights. Our newsletter growth continues to expand. More huddles and COPs than ever before. And then we saw a record-breaking website views in 2020, 182,930 plus website views. So pretty exciting wins. And before I turn it over to Steve, one more thing is virtual lobby gathering is coming. Very fast. It's coming up February 23rd to the 23rd and 24th. It's going to be an amazing online event from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time on that Tuesday and Wednesday. We've got some 2 amazing panel sessions for you guys, and then over 50 plus breakout sessions. So go to smallgroupnetwork.com/events, and you can get 30% off now by using the code SAVECASH. Don't you love that code, Steve? Save Cash.
I love to save cash. Is it all caps or lower, or it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters, but go all caps just to be safe.
That sounded pretty confident. I love that answer. All right. So before we move off the network nuggets on diversity, just to highlight, whenever you're in proximity with someone not like you and get to know their story, it breeds empathy. And so it's going to be important for each of us to walk through those pieces. Just let me give you something that may not be on the highlight reel, but when our small group, we have a couple people in our small group who are of Japanese descent. And when we went to Manzanar, and to me, I was totally unaware of what Manzanar was, but it was a holding ground for Japanese American people. And when World War II erupted out here by the bombing of Pearl Harbor, all of the Japanese Americans were put into internment camps. And they lost all of their possessions and everything. And we didn't realize the impactment. It was completely off my radar. But as a small group, we went up there because 2 of the people in our group of Japanese descent, their grandparents were in those internment camps, and they lost everything. The government came in, seized all their assets. They were put into an internment camp. And then at the close of the war, it was, sorry about that, we made a mistake and hope you start off okay. But to be in that time and holding arms with each other, and I was with one of my closest brothers in our group, Tyra, and crying with him because being the proximity of being close to the pain gave me a whole new set of empathy. And so before we just go off diversity, it's not so much of healing, although we want racial reconciliation, but it's just getting to know people that are different than you and understand what makes them tick and their pain points. So just want to go into that before we go to the next thing. So.
Wow, we are like going from highs and lows and laughing to crying on this show. This isn't going to be an epic one to remember.
Well, you know what? That's the beauty of what this pandemic has brought. It's brought parallel tracks of highs and lows that have had pain points. So let me say. And by the way, those great highlights that Derek gave you, we'll put on the show notes there. We got it marked and earmarked that we'll make sure that you guys get to see that if you didn't see it. And I've got that. I got that in my notes, Derek. So we'll kind of move with it. Let's go on to the leadership learning, which we're going to talk about civility. And Derek, I want you to practice civility with me. It's important that you and I model this on the show so that, things can happen. Basically, and this is going to be in the show notes too. I want to give you 7 guidelines to being civil. It has broken my heart as I've talked with followers of Christ who are basically jerks. Who lash out, that they scream, that they spew and they can't even do it in a civil way. And when civility leaves our churches, it models just awful things to the people who don't know Christ. And so I want to give you 7 guidelines. And I know this show's a little bit longer, but I think it's going to be very important for each one of us to kind of digest these things. That's why we're going to put it in the show notes. But if you're going to have a conversation with somebody not like you, so we're coming out of diversity, and now we're going to talk about civility. But the first thing is you need to listen with your eyes. Don't roll your eyes. Listen with your eyes and acknowledge their views. One of the things whenever I'm dialoguing with people who are upset at Saddleback for whatever reason, even goes previous to the pandemic, like when we changed worship styles, when we changed and we stopped midweek, to when when we started reaching out to HIV/AIDS and did conferences. Whatever people were upset about, it's important to acknowledge people and just hear them, because they have genuine points of view that you need to listen to, not interrupt. Although many times our listening skills are trained to say, what should I say about this point that I'm just pissed off about that they said? But actually spend your time listening to them with that. The second thing is when you're going to meet with somebody, monitor how hungry are you and how sleepy are you? And this is like marriage 101. You don't have a discussion in your marriage when you're both hangry and when you're both sleepy. I remember when the kids were young and we were both sleep deprived, it was not a healthy time to have a conversation about anything. Just even last night, right before we were airing the show, Lisa and I were in bed, both fatigued. We have a pet that is, not sure how long it's going to survive. We were both just totally fatigued about something. And then all of a sudden, the dog loses its ability to hold its stuff in its body. And so, I know, laugh at my pain. That's not being civil right there, people. That TMI. Is incivility. It is but then it became a discussion of who's cleaning it up? Why did it happen? And when you're fatigued, it doesn't go to a good place. But, monitor that. Number 3, understand what's their diet between social media news and the good news. And this is one of my greatest learnings in talking with people. If they have a healthy balance of social media news and reading the good news, then the conversation will be good. If it's skewed more towards this, they're spending more time in social media news than they are in good news, that should be a highlight, but it's something where we want to steer things towards. The fourth thing is neither side can trivialize. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for, or dismiss the concerns of the others. So their feelings aren't facts, but they are their feelings. The next one, number 5. Neither side should define the other according to a single characteristic or identity marker. And so often there are talking points that we know about people, or how they're going to act, or how they're going to believe, or where their theology is, or where their race is, or where their political leanings are, or where their gender's at. And then all of a sudden, we're stereotyping them, and you just can't do that. Number 6, both sides should aim to help each other understand their own experiences and perspectives using a type of speech. Now, this can be your tone or your words that can be heard by the other. And I would just say this: people are going to remember your tone more than they're going to remember your words when you're having a conversation. So, obviously, if words go off the rails, and there's cussing and slanderous remarks and things like that, obviously very bad. But even well-meant nice words, if the tone isn't right, it can hurt the civility of the issue. And then the 7th thing I want to encourage you to go with is both sides. Now, this is going to be a point that it tripped me up, and I think it might trip you up too, but listen me through. Both sides should accept the fundamental ground rule of life in a free society. The essence of liberty is the right to be different and act wrongly in the eyes of others. And part of this is you just got to agree to disagree. But let me read that to you again. The essence of liberty is the right to be different and to act wrongly in the eyes of others. Now, what this spawns up is, you look at the fundamental role of fear in situations of public conflict that we end up facing in our culture, politics, and law. And can I even say in our small groups, that when people can behave differently and act wrongly in my eyes, they're acting wrongly in my eyes, that can trigger fear with that. And it can be the fear of being excluded from full participation in this public disclosure or in public life. That's a genuine fear. It can be a fear that the other side is going to try and coerce or change my side's core identity. There can be the fear that the other side will use the power of law to force my side's conformity with beliefs and practices that we find vile. And I'm going to spend the trending topic talking a lot about that, because laws are always downstream of culture. And so I want to wrap talking about that. And then there's a fourth fear, the fear of losing or betraying deeply valued relationships of love, either with the divine or with people or with both. Now, when you're looking at civility and you're looking at those 7 things, it's going to be important as we're wrapping through on how to be civil with each other and how not to step on each other's toes. But fear is your greatest enemy in being civil. I've seen over the last 8 years or so how different presidents can cause the other side to have a presidential deranged syndrome. I saw it 4 years ago. I see it currently. Both sides, we all kind of get, messed up because our focus isn't on doing Jesus stuff and really believing that Jesus has everything in control. And when you are a follower of Christ and you understand first century people, we had nothing to do with government. The Roman Empire totally dictated everything to us as believers, because our identity wasn't in politics. Now, I get how politics can play a role, and I can understand how people can want laws that are in place. But in the end, the laws never change people's hearts. In 1865, when Abraham Lincoln, gave the Emancipation Proclamation, it was law, but not everyone's hearts were changed because of the law. And that's why having a civil approach to dialoguing with people and agreeing to disagree doesn't mean, I have brothers and sisters that I know from different religious backgrounds. Sometimes on the evangelical side, sometimes on, in that vast array of, mainline churches, or versus the new founding denominations that have sprung up from people in the Jewish world and in the Muslim world, and that I can agree to disagree. It doesn't mean I'm going to follow them or want to be a part of them, but I can also be civil towards them. And that's the important thing that so often we forget how to give to civility. And I think the trending topic is going to help pull these pieces together. But I'll give it to Derek if there's commentary or just push on.
No, I really enjoyed the 7 points on the civilities. That was really great. And today we're talking about, last but not least in this trending topic, the 3 areas your groups can shine in today's culture, because that's really the positive spin on all this, is we want your groups to shine. As dark as the culture gets, we're called to be the light. And, before I hand it off to Steve, as Steve kind of hit on earlier, we are coming out of the craziest year that most of us have ever lived in 2020 with the pandemic and the riots. We're coming out of the craziest political election that probably most of us alive can remember. So this is really uncharted territory. None of us claim to have all the answers. And so Steve and I are doing our best here to navigate with all of you on these topics. So Steve, take it from there.
Yeah, and just to put an exclamation point on the craziness, I just saw that in today's paper that because of the high rate of suicides, amongst teenagers, Las Vegas has voted to open their school system wide open because of the side effects that this pandemic has been having. I know we try to limit it to, it's all about the protests, or it's all about the pandemic, or it's all about the presidential election, these big things there. But the underlying repercussions that we've had have just been huge. And so, so I just want to echo, this is personally, I've been going through this. Derek's been going this. We don't have all the answers, as he's been saying, but we got to have civil conversations, because the church is starting to look like it doesn't have the answers. It's starting to look like it may have the answers, whether you're on one side or another in your leanings, because we all go to that unity side, but we don't. We look like our political affiliation is the answer, versus helping people look to Jesus as the answer. And as I said before, it baffles my mind why we think laws are going to change people's hearts when it's only going to be the gospel that is going to change somebody's heart. And that's seen in America in the Obama era, where abortion was talked about and said to be okay, but because the church was able to do its part, actually abortions went down. And when you look at big topics at a super high level, like abortion or sexual identity or racism or socialism, which, there's people that are all in a tizzy about socialism. Like I said, laws don't change people's heart. But if the church does what it should do, if your small group ministry, if your small group will do the right biblical thing, it'll do more to change where our country's going than any part of legislation. Because any legislation that comes through doesn't really change my heart. It tells me what I can do without going to prison or something like that. But a law for or against abortion doesn't affect my point of view. The Bible affects my point of view. Let me just give you some high point of view. Let's look at some of the hot topics, and this will get me, I'm sure, in much trouble as I'm talking about this. But you look at abortion. In the show notes is some stats, a little bit dated, but they've only been proven harder in the 2020 data that's shown. But the two main reasons why people get an abortion is because they don't think they're going to have the health care to take care of their baby, and they don't have a community that will accept them. Now, can you help me with how beautiful small groups are and being able to come around people and to give them community? What's even a screwier stat is that most people who get abortions have a religious background and are married, but they don't think they're going to have the support. They don't think they can afford it. They're making a decision based on isolation. What do you think this pandemic has done? Put us in isolation. So a lot of us are making decisions in such an isolated form that we don't have the context of how your small groups can help people that are going through distress. Look at racism. The most segregated hour in America is on Sunday mornings. And I get why we like unity, because of music styles or preaching styles or things like that. But if we don't work to get to know other people that are different than us, and if we struggle with diversity, it's gonna split that divide more open than ever before. Socialism that people are scared about, and this is just my point of view. It's not even Derek's. So it's just my point of view of why socialism could happen in the United States, because we live in such a broken society and we have such broken systems that we have generations of young adults who are voting that they haven't had a parent. They haven't had a church that's rallied around them and seen the beauty of what a small group can bring them. And so when they don't have those things and the government says, hey, we'll step in, we'll be your parent, of course they're going to vote for something like that because they've never had it. But if the church would do it, oh my goodness, it would. There's things that we wouldn't even contemplate doing because the church is there. And in sexual identity that hits most people going into puberty. So when they're in 5th or 6th grade or middle school or junior high or wherever you do it, unfortunately, the church sometimes isn't open to conversations, to have a conversation. They don't know how to show love, but also show the biblical approach to what it is. It tends to be more, I fear I'm losing control. We talked about this in the civility block. I fear like I'm losing control. So what I want to do is I want to clamp down. And the church is beautiful about making laws. If you want to go into one of our less exciting places of church history, look at the Salem witch trials and how the church led the moment to, make, erratic decisions without conversations. But in sexual identity, I think, a person, if you don't know him, Preston Sprinkle, is just super to help your church do that. Now, I don't mean to go into these 4 issues, but I'm just saying these are hot topic things that if the church doesn't move more towards looking at unity, looking at diversity, looking at civility, we're going to divide the church into 2 camps. We're going to have churches that become political engines. So you can go to your church to hear your political side, or we're going to have churches that are going to focus on the Great Commission and the Great Commandment and doing the things that help our community see Jesus in a great light. For years, I've been affiliated with denominations that have seen what they would consider left-leaning churches do nothing for the gospel. And I'll tell you right now, we're on the precipice of seeing right-wing churches doing the exact same thing, because instead of being attractional to people, we're being revolting to people by the way we act. And so what I would encourage you is, on the Sermon on the Mount was a beautiful piece when Jesus talked about, lead us not into temptation. And so often we go to hot topics and we get tempted to make it, let me win my argument versus let me learn about the person. And there's a whole, thing I could go into, but, study temptation. And so many of those very things about how you can move away from temptation, which is in the Sermon on the Mount, you always hear it taught on sexual temptation. But there's a temptation to get into politics. There's a temptation to get into racism. There's a temptation to get into gender slamming. There's a temptation that leads us into, any point of view you want to go towards. And so all I'm just saying is that in this show, I want to encourage you in your small group ministry. You have to lead the way. You have to model it personally. You have to see it in your small group. You have to be able to help, that your small group ministry be the tip of the spear, not tip of the fear, tip of the spear. Being able to say, how can we look at unity and take the sweetness of what unity can bring, but yet how can we go into diversity and not have our heads in the sand and not seeing what's around us? And how can we look towards civility so we can have conversations? We may end up with different perspectives, but that's okay, because the perspective that is the most important to us is not how you vote, is not how you look, is not the language you speak, but the most important thing to us is, how are we helping the gospel move forward in being a light to the world in a culture, as Derek alluded to, is going very, very, very dark. And if we're not careful, we're going to be contributors to that split in the divide versus being healers of what unity is about. And again, I just encourage you, look at Rick's notes that are in the show notes, 12 great things on, helping with unity. But it starts with us as small group point leaders. It ekes into our own personal small group and will carry into our small group ministry and our church.
Well, you navigated that well, Steve. Great job. Those are your 3 areas for your groups to shine in today's culture. And we really hope and pray that encouraged you. And we hope that will encourage your group ministry in turn. And as always, we want to thank you guys for spending part of your day with us. Make sure to stay on the line, as our producer Jason is coming next to give you a very important announcement. And with that, we pray you have an amazing February. Until next time, goodbye.
See you.
Hey, Small Group Network family, Jason Banzoff here, Group Talk producer and Small Group Network creative arts director. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Inside Saddleback, and thank you to Steve and Derek for that great episode. Now, before we go, let's talk about some upcoming events. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions in California, this year's annual lobby gathering will be held live online. And the lobby is one of the nation's premier small group training and networking events. This year's event will run from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time each day, and will start off with a general session in the first hour, followed by various breakout sessions on every small group hot topic you can think of. Speakers include Steve Gladen from Saddleback, Bill Willits from North Point, Jared Kirkwood from Mariners, and Dave Enns from North Coast, and over 40 breakout session speakers. Get 30% off now by using code SAVECASH. That's SAVECASH. Visit smallgroupnetwork.com/events to register you and your team today. And also, we can't forget about Accelerate. Accelerate the health and growth of your small group ministry by attending one of our Accelerate small group workshops. Coming up, we have one in South Carolina, April 12th and 13th, in Florida, which I will be hosting on April 20th and 21st, and in Las Vegas, May 4th through the 5th. These are going to be events you don't want to miss, so make sure you check out smallgroupnetwork.com/events. And thank you for listening to Group Talk. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast through iTunes and get new episodes downloaded automatically. Also, if you enjoy this program, please take a few minutes to give us a positive rating on iTunes so that other small group point people can find us more easily. We encourage you to visit our website at smallgroupnetwork.com to access our library of free resources, connect to a huddle with other small group ministry leaders in your area, read our blog articles, or join us on our Facebook group. Don't forget to use the hashtag SGNet when engaging with your social media channels. Thank you for your support.